Hey guys, tonight we follow in the frozen footsteps of men who slept beneath the stars, with wolves howling in the distance and snow packed up to their knees. You ever thought your room felt cold at night? Try crawling into a pile of pine needles, with frost clinging to your beard and the nearest fireplace over 200 miles away. Welcome to the Rocky Mountains, where survival was less about courage and more about cleverness, grit, and the occasional spoonful of bear fat. You won't believe some of the things these guys did to keep warm. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight, and what's the time where you are? Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. You step off the edge of civilization just as the sun kisses the top of the jagged Rockies, painting the snowcaps in a blush of gold. Behind you lies the last trading post, a cluster of half-rotten logs and soot-stained chimneys, where a man might buy flour or trade beaver pelts for whiskey. Ahead, nothing but wilderness. You've been warned, these mountains eat men for breakfast. The air is thinner here, crisp like broken glass. You suck in a breath and your lungs sting, your breath already billowing like smoke. By the time you've climbed your first ridge, the sun has dipped below the horizon, and a lavender haze spreads over the peaks. This is not the kind of cold that makes your teeth chatter. This is the kind that feels like it's whispering under your skin, curling into your joints like an unwanted guest. The weight of your pack pulls hard against your spine. Inside it, 3 traps, a half roll of jerked venison, 1 wool blanket riddled with moth holes, a flint stone and your father's hatchet. It's not enough. You know that now. Your first night alone in the Rockies comes without ceremony. There is no welcome party, no soft moonlight glow, just shadows and wind, and the distant yip of something too big to be a fox, too hungry to ignore. You scan the terrain desperately. A fallen log, a shallow rise, no caves, no natural shelters. The ground is frozen stiff, the kind that won't even take a boot print. So you do what the old trapper back at the post told you. Dig into the snow like an animal. You shovel with your hands until your fingers ache, carving a shallow trench and line it with boughs from a nearby pine. The needles crackle like glass in your grip, sharp and unforgiving. Still, it's better than dirt. You throw the moth-eaten blanket over your shoulders and hunch into your trench. No fire tonight, no time, no dry wood, and too much wind. You curl into yourself like a walnut, every inch of your body screaming against the cold, and you whisper into the dark, "What the hell was I thinking?" By midnight, the stars are out in full force. No clouds, no cover, just moon so bright it casts sharp shadows on the snow. Your lips crack, your toes go numb. You try to flex them, but they've already stiffened. And then you remember the trapper again, how he muttered something about stuffing moss into his boots to keep the blood flowing. You try it. You stumble up, strip off your stiff socks, jam your boots full of pine moss, then jam your feet back inside. It's damp, cold, but oddly better. You laugh once, quietly, like someone sneaking a joke past death. That's the first time the Rockies teach you. Comfort is not the goal. Survival is. Somewhere in the distance a cougar screams. The sound slides through your bones like a blade. But you don't move. You're learning. Noise doesn't mean threat. The real danger is the cold itself. Quiet, patient, and ever-present. The next morning your joints crack when you try to stand. Your body feels brittle, but your breath comes out warm and your heart is still thumping. You made it. 1 night down, dozens to go. You spend your second night under the same stars, but you're already a little smarter. You don't wait for the dark to catch you this time. Before sundown, you scout for a hollow tree, a trick the trappers call wooden coffins. Morbid name, but they work. You find one, burned on one side by lightning, still standing like a broken tooth among the drifts. The inside smells like mould and old bark. It's barely wide enough to crouch, but it's out of the wind, and that alone feels like velvet. You gather branches for insulation, dry ones this time from the leeward side of a cliff where snow couldn't reach. You remember the fringe advice from that one-eyed guy in the saloon, the one who reeked of squirrel fat and swore by it. He claimed if you stuff your shirt with crushed sage and snow mould, it traps heat. You try it, if only out of desperation. The scent is awful, but tonight, for the first time, your fingers don't go numb. You chew on hardtack and suck the ice off the bark you've been sitting on, trying not to waste your limited water. That's another trap here. The snow looks clean, tastes pure, but it'll kill your body heat if you take in too much raw. A man can die hydrated but hypothermic. You remember someone said to melt it first under your armpit. You try. It works, but it's like licking a wet sock. In the middle of the night, you're woken by something worse than cold. Silence. No wind, no coyotes, nothing. That's when you know the real freeze is setting in. No animal moves when it gets this cold. You reach for your hatchet out of instinct, then remember there's no enemy, except the chill that seeps into your core like water through a cracked roof. By dawn, your back aches. Your beard is frozen stiff, and your breath curls like smoke against the side of the hollow tree. You've earned your second sunrise. Barely. The third day, something changes. You find tracks, fresh ones, human, 2 sets. You follow at a distance, hand on your rifle, and eventually spot them. 2 young men, not much older than you, hauling rabbit skins in a sled made from elk ribs. They call out. You don't answer. Not yet. Not until you smell them. They don't smell like death. That's a good sign. They wave you over, offer a sip of boiled cattail tea from a battered tin pot. It's the best thing you've tasted since entering this wilderness. You sit in silence, warming your hands around the pot, while one of them tells you how he lost 3 toes last winter because he tried to sleep near a frozen creek. The other laughs and says, if your spit freezes before it hits the ground, you don't sleep. You pace. You take that to heart. That night you don't dig into the snow or huddle in trees. You build your first windbreak, stack fallen branches waist high, angle them against the breeze, and crawl behind them like a fox. The pine boughs go underneath you again, and you boil snow this time, letting it warm in the pot before sipping slow. Your fire is small, hidden, flickering like a secret, but it's enough. Before sleep, you roll up your socks and wedge them into your coat. Lesson from a French-Canadian trapper who swore cold socks meant cold blood. You laugh quietly, thinking how every man out here is half freezing, half mad and full of tricks. The Rockies haven't killed you yet, but they're not done trying. You wake up with frost lining your eyebrows and the imprint of pine needles pressed into your cheek. Every bone in your body complains, but the fire is still smouldering and your fingers still twitch. That's a win out here. You stretch, careful not to snap anything important, and pack up camp. The wind's picked up, whispering down from the ridges like it knows something you don't. You know what comes next. Shelter. In the Rockies, finding cover before sundown isn't a suggestion. It's a rule tattooed into your marrow. The sun is a liar here. It looks warm, but it's dropping fast. You check the sky. No clouds, which means the cold will fall hard tonight. Clear skies cut the worst. Without insulation, it's like sleeping naked in the teeth of a glacier. You pass an old trail marker. 3 stones stacked in a pyramid, half covered in snow. Not recent, maybe a month old. maybe more. You don't trust it. You veer west, hugging a shallow valley where the wind dies down between tall spruce. By mid-afternoon, you find something promising. A rocky outcrop, almost like a shelf carved into the mountainside. There's just enough of a lip overhead to block snow, and a deep indent in the stone that someone, maybe long ago, tried to make habitable. You inspect the space. No animal tracks, no scat, no smell. Good enough. You get to work. First comes the floor. You lay down fresh pine boughs in thick layers, learning to snap each one upward so the needles point toward your feet when you sleep. Little spears that trap air and hold heat. Then the walls. You gather stones and old branches, weaving a half wall to block the gusts. It's not pretty, it's not warm, but it's shelter, and that's more than most men have. By now your hands are red and raw. You rub them with a bit of bear grease from a pouch in your pack. A gift from one of the boys you met, the younger one with the burned gloves. He said, "That fat's warmer than whiskey." You believed him. You chop kindling with your hatchet, hands clumsy but sure. You've done this 4 nights now, and already your body's learning. You know to stack the driest twigs in the centre and build the teepee shape tight, like a breath held in place. One strike with flint, and sparks fly. Another, a third. You curse, try again. The spark catches on a curl of birch bark. Flame. The smell of smoke wraps around you like a friend you didn't know you missed. You keep it small, controlled, nestled behind a rock to hide the light. Fires can invite trouble, both human and beast. But without it, you'll freeze, and there's no pride in dying quiet. With fire crackling low, you lean back against the stone wall and eat a strip of dried meat. Elk, smoked weeks ago, now leathery and bitter. But it's protein, and your body gulps it like it's caviar. You take a moment to just breathe. The firelight flickers on the cave walls. Your breath clouds the air. You realise this is the first time in days you've sat still without shivering. You hear nothing but the pop of sap in the kindling. Then a noise, faint, a shifting in the dark. You freeze. Not animal. Bootsteps. Someone's out there. You grip your rifle without thinking. The fire crackles on, innocent and oblivious, casting dancing shadows across the rocky overhang. You don't move. You listen. 2 steps, then nothing. Whoever it is knows how to walk quiet. That's not good. Only 2 kinds of folks know how to move like that in the Rockies. Hunters or thieves. You douse the fire with a pinch of snow, just enough to dull the glow but not kill the coals. Then you wait, back pressed against the cold stone, rifle resting across your knees, eyes scanning the dark. You think of the story one of the traders told, about the man who got his supplies stolen on the 7th night and was found weeks later frozen stiff with his fingers still wrapped around an empty rifle. The air is still, dead still. Then a voice cuts through the dark. Hoarse, hesitant. Don't shoot, just passing through. You say nothing. The voice again. Ain't after nothing, just saw the smoke. You keep your finger near the trigger, but your eyes relax slightly. No one looking for a fight announces themselves. You stand slowly, letting your boots crunch the ice. No food to spare, you say. Didn't ask, the man replies. After a pause, you catch a glimpse. He steps into the faint firelight, thin, older, maybe mid-40s, face drawn tight like stretched hide. He wears a patched wool coat and carries a bow instead of a rifle. That alone tells you plenty. Powder's hard to come by these days. Either he's desperate or he's skilled enough not to need it. I'm camped downhill. Just wanted to make sure you weren't a corpse, he says, nodding at your half-dug shelter. You give him a long look. Not yet. He grins, showing 3 missing teeth and raises a hand in farewell. Then I'll leave you to it. He's gone before you can reply. You stare into the dark for a while longer, then slowly ease back into your shelter. You don't relight the fire. Not tonight. Your gut says it's safer cold than seen. That night you lie awake, thinking about the man with the bow. You wonder how many like him are scattered across these mountains, half-wild ghosts who drift between snowbanks and sleep behind rocks. It hits you that you might already be becoming one of them. At dawn your limbs are stiff from sleeping cold, but your brain is sharper than ever. You learned something. Fire isn't always the answer. Sometimes the better trick is invisibility. You pack up early and climb high to scan the horizon. The view is staggering. Snow-laced pines stretch out like an endless sea, peaks layered behind peaks, the sun rising behind them like an ember in a forge. It's beautiful, sure, but you don't forget what it hides. Below, you spot something odd, an unnatural line cutting through the snow. A path, maybe made by deer, or a man. Either way, it heads toward a distant ridge. That ridge will be your next destination. But you know now, you can't wander forever. Eventually you'll need something better than rock shelves and hollow trees. You'll need to build. But first, you need to survive one more night. You gather pine needles, check your boots for ice, and mentally rehearse the checklist you're building without realizing. Location, fire, insulation, food, light, silence, escape. Survival, after all, is just another habit. The sun deceives you again. It rises warm and soft, painting the snow with a gentle gold that almost makes you believe this day will be kind. But you know better now. The cold in the Rockies doesn't announce itself. It waits. It hides in the shadows, in the north-facing slopes, in your own sweat when you work too fast and cool down too quick. You wipe your forehead on a rag and remind yourself to keep your pace slow, efficient, measured. The mountain punishes the eager. Your goal today is simple. Fire. Not the tiny flicker you had before, but a real lasting fire, one that won't die when the wind rolls in like a freight train. You've been hoarding what you could, birch bark, resin-rich pine, even a few half-rotten branches that you dried inside your coat as you walked. But it's not enough. You need something drier, better. Down the slope, past a patch of snow-choked scrub, you spot your best hope, a fallen cedar. It's dead, maybe struck by lightning long ago, but the bark still clings in thick, curling sheets. You take your hatchet and begin slicing, peeling the outer layers like old skin. Inside, it's dry, red gold and fragrant. It smells like life. You pack what you can carry, twigs, slivers, a few hunks of dry heartwood. Then you search for what the trappers call the gift of the forest, fatwood. It's the hardened, resin-saturated remains of pine, left behind when the rest of the tree rots. You've never seen it before, but you remember the signs. It looks oily, feels heavy. And when you spot a glistening orange chunk embedded in a split stump, you grin. Fatwood burns even when wet, and tonight you'll need every edge. You climb back toward your new shelter, a ledge nestled beneath an overhanging boulder, with one side reinforced by snow brick walls. It's crude, but growing more like a home each day. Your pine bough bed is thicker now. You've woven a mat of grass and bark fibres to rest your gear on. And today, you plan to add something rare. A chimney stone. A trick you heard from a fur trader who passed out drunk in the saloon, but still managed to teach you something before his beard caught fire. He said if you stack stones and leave just enough space for smoke to funnel upward, it draws heat without choking you. You decide to try it. 2 rocks here, one on top, a gap there. You pack snow around the edges to seal the draft. Then you light your fire. The fatwood flares with an eager hiss. Orange tongues lick upward, dancing between the stones. The warmth blooms fast. and your shelter fills with a sweet, sharp scent. You crouch beside it, rubbing your hands. For the first time, it feels like you're not just avoiding death. You're shaping something, fighting back. Still, the fire brings its own trouble. Too big, and it'll eat your wood in an hour. Too bright, and someone might spot it. Too smoky, and you'll choke yourself before you freeze. You sit back, letting the flames settle. Then you hear a sound, tiny but familiar, a soft plink-plink against the rocks. Snowmelt. Your chimney's working. The fire has found its rhythm, cracking steady like a heartbeat. You sit close, arms wrapped round your knees, watching as the resin-slick logs burn with a stubborn glow. It's mesmerizing, and for a few minutes you almost forget where you are. Almost. Then a gust of wind snakes in through the chimney gap and dances across your face, a cold reminder. The fire sputters. Not out, but not strong. You stoke it with a thin branch and mutter a quiet thanks to that piece of fat wood you tucked under the driest kindling. Without it, you'd be shivering again. You start working on a habit that seems strange at first, but comes straight from the old journals you once flipped through at the trading post, laying out tomorrow's kindling tonight. You gather it now while your fingers still move and while the light still works in your favour. Not in the morning. Morning cold makes a man clumsy. You build a bundle, twigs sorted by size, from hair thin to pencil thick, all tied with a bit of sinew. You tuck it under your bedroll near your chest, so it stays dry and warms with your body heat. That's the level of planning the cold demands. Not cleverness, just discipline. While you're arranging the stones tighter around the fire pit, you remember a strange trick that same one-eyed fur trader mentioned before passing out, about how he once lit a fire using powdered charcoal, pine resin, and a bit of gunpowder when his flint was soaked. He said it burned so hot it scorched the snow around him into a perfect black ring. You don't try that today, but the image sticks. A man surrounded by fire in a frozen world. The sky darkens fast. No twilight, no warning. 1 minute it's dull grey, the next it's black as pitch. You step outside your little ledge and scan the horizon. The clouds are heavy and low, hanging like wet wool across the peaks. A storm's coming. Back inside, you reorganise your shelter. Gear on one side, fire centre, bedroll against the back wall. You shift your rocks to better reflect the heat inward, and jam snow into every crack to seal the wind. You even hang your shirt near the fire to steam off the damp. It smells like wood smoke and pine sweat. As you settle in, you realise you've begun to see your fire differently. It's not just warmth, it's a presence, a companion. In the dead stillness of these nights it speaks, not in words but in rhythm. Crackle, pop, crackle again. Each snap reminds you. You're alive. Hours pass. The wind kicks harder, whistling across the ledge like a flute. You feed the fire slowly, rationing your wood. You sleep in half dreams, never fully letting go. Your ears stay tuned for trouble. Sometime deep in the night you stir. The fire's low, the cave's grown colder, and outside something groans. Not wind, not rockfall, tree branch, or worse. You sit up, heart thudding, but nothing moves. You grip your rifle, listen hard, and wait. Still nothing. Eventually you ease back down and watch the coals flicker their last. You don't relight the fire. You just watch the glow fade and whisper a promise to yourself. Tomorrow you'll gather double the fatwood. You're starting to think like a mountain man. By now, the cold doesn't surprise you. It waits, always, and you've come to accept its quiet company. But sleep? That's still a negotiation. Every night you learn a little more about how not to freeze to death, and it starts with what you sleep on. See, you'd think warmth comes from the blanket over your back or the fire near your face. But out here, that's only half the battle. The real enemy is beneath you. The snow, the frozen dirt, even solid rock. Each one saps your body heat like a thirsty ghost, pulling warmth down and away. You're not sleeping in the cold, you're sleeping against it. So tonight, you try something different. You recall a bit of trail wisdom from an old crow guide who spoke more with his hands than his voice. He showed you once, without a word, how to layer pine boughs, bark and hide in a way that made the earth feel less like an icebox and more like a shallow cradle. You dismissed it at the time. Now you'd give your left boot to remember every motion he made. You head down toward the frozen creek and cut a wide swath of spruce boughs, careful to choose the springy ones, the kind with flexible needles that bounce when you step on them. You drag them back up the hill, shedding ice as you climb. Back at camp you spread them thick, first crosswise, then lengthwise, making a lattice of green beneath your bedroll. Then the hide. You only have one, taken from a scrawny mule deer you shot 2 days back. It still smells faintly of iron and smoke from the tanning rack you rigged with sticks. But laid flat over the boughs, it feels like wealth. You test the new bed by lying down fully clothed. 2 shirts, 1 coat, and a pair of rag-stuffed moccasins. And for the first time in days you sink instead of stiffen. It's not soft. Let's not kid ourselves. A bed of pine and bone isn't exactly a feather mattress, but it's warm, insulated, high and dry. You press your back against the hide and feel the difference instantly. No icy stab from the earth, no rising damp, just the gentle cushion of boughs and fur. It smells of tree sap and animal fat. Not pleasant, but strangely comforting. While the sun still lingers on the ridgeline, you gather extra firewood and wedge it between your shelter stones to keep it dry. Every task you do now, you do with a future version of yourself in mind. The tired, half-frozen one who'll curse you tomorrow if you don't plan ahead. That night, you eat a strip of cold meat and chase it with melted snow warmed over a rock. No boiling this time. You've learned to just place your tin cup on the stone near the fire, not in the flames. It warms slow, steady, and never scorches. You're learning the rhythm of heat. Before sleep, you double-check your bed, pull in the hide tight, shaking loose the twigs that poked your ribs the night before, tucking your extra socks into the corner like a pillow. And for the first time in nearly a week, you fall asleep without shivering. Your body wakes you before the dawn, not because it's cold, but because it isn't. That alone startles you. You open your eyes slowly, blinking up at a roof of pine branches and dark stone. Your fire's gone to ash, and the air in your shelter is crisp, but not biting. The bed worked. You sit up carefully. No cracking joints, no numb fingertips. Your breath still curls in the air, but your chest feels loose, not tight. It's a strange sensation. Comfort out here. Outside, the forest is hushed. Not quiet, not dead. Just wrapped in the muffled stillness that only snow can bring. You pull on your outer layer, fingers working the stiff buttons, and step into the pale blue light of pre-dawn. It snowed lightly overnight. You hadn't noticed. The fine dusting sparkles across the ridge like ground glass, and just beyond the trees a trail of tiny print zigzags. Rabbit, probably. But it's what isn't there that makes your stomach tighten. No human tracks. That matters. Out here, footprints mean everything. You go back to camp and make your fire again. The kindling you kept warm beneath your coat catches fast. You boil water slowly. Sip it while perched on a flat rock near your bed of boughs, steam curling into the morning frost. You're about to get up and break camp when a sound stops you. A soft chuff, then the crunch of weight over snow. You reach for your rifle slowly. No sudden movements. Not yet. Through the trees, a shape, dark, hulking. A mule deer? No. Too broad. Not bear either. Then you see the curled horns, A mountain goat. It stands maybe 20 yards away, chewing on a low branch, completely uninterested in you. The wind must be in your favour. It hasn't caught your scent yet. You stay still, rifle resting across your lap, breath held. You think about taking the shot. Fresh meat, warm hide, a full belly. But you also think about your firewood stack, low. Your energy, low. And the slope the goat would tumble down if hit. Not easy to climb, so you let it be. That, you realise, might be the strangest lesson of all out here. Not every opportunity is worth chasing. Not every prize is worth freezing for. Instead, you turn back to your shelter and spend the morning reinforcing it. You build a sidewall from packed snow, using your cooking tin to mould bricks like a mountain mason. You stuff the wall seams with dry grass. You add an extra layer of pine under your bedroll. You even sharpen your hatchet using a whetstone that once belonged to your grandfather, a man who never saw the Rockies but would have respected what you're becoming. Later, as dusk bleeds into the pines, you test your work. You lie on your improved bed, fire glowing near your boots, and press your hand to the pine bough floor. No chill. Your body relaxes and your mind drifts. You dream of dry boots and buffalo hides, of trading posts where no one shoots first, of sleep that doesn't come with consequences. But before you fully drift off, your brain logs one last truth. Simple, but essential. Warmth doesn't come from fire alone. Sometimes it rises from what you build beneath you. By now, you've learned the ground can kill you faster than hunger. So can wet clothes, and so can cold food. You wake on your 6th day in the Rockies with a clear priority. Eat something hot. The problem is, most of what you have either freezes solid overnight or turns to mush if left near the fire too long. Your dried venison is now so stiff it could patch a boot. Your biscuits snap like slate, but you need calories, and not just to move. Out here you burn energy just staying alive. Your body is your furnace, and fuel is warmth. You eye your supplies. 2 handfuls of beans, a pouch of salt, a slab of old tallow wrapped in cloth, and 1 small tin cup with a dented rim. Not much, but it'll do. First, the fire. You coax the coals back to life using bark and dry grass. The resin-slick pine you gathered yesterday flares bright and hot, and within minutes you've got a reliable heat base. You nestle a flat rock into the flame's edge, your makeshift stovetop. Then you set the dented tin cup on top, filled with water and a few beans. It's slow work. The beans don't so much cook as soften by stubbornness, but the steam rises. The smell, nutty and earthy, pulls you into the present. You sprinkle salt, stir with a pine twig, add a sliver of tallow for richness. You feel like a mountain chef. You sip slowly. Each warm mouthful spreads down your throat like melted flint. It's not delicious, but it's heat. Internal heat. The kind that stays longer than firelight. The meal reminds you of something peculiar a trapper once told you. Eat hot and you'll sleep warm. You'd laughed then, but now you get it. There's science in it, or at least mountain wisdom. A warm core staves off the freeze that creeps in once you lie down. You finish the beans and feel it already. Your fingers tingle, not from cold, but from circulation. You decide to make hot meals a nightly ritual, but that brings another challenge. Keeping things from freezing solid during the day. So you start experimenting. You rig a pouch from a fox hide and sling it inside your coat close to your chest. It hangs awkwardly, but it keeps small food items thawed. You place a biscuit inside. 2 hours later, it's soft enough to chew. Success. It's not elegant, but then again, nothing out here is. Later that afternoon, you get bold. You dig a small pit outside the shelter, line it with rocks, and build a fire right into it. When the fire dies, the rocks stay hot. You scrape out the ashes and place your tin of leftover beans inside, cover it with bark, then snow, a sort of crude root cellar oven. You wait. 3 hours later, you dig it up. Warm, not hot, but warm. You laugh. Alone, mouth full, snow in your beard, you look ridiculous. But your belly is no longer empty, and for the first time your food feels like a victory. You lean back against the shelter wall, lick your spoon clean, and think to yourself, this isn't just surviving anymore, it's learning how to live. With warmth in your belly, the world feels a little less cruel. You didn't expect that from a handful of beans, but it's true. Something about a hot meal in a frozen world rewrites your sense of what matters. That night, you sleep deeper. Not fully, never fully, but enough. The dreams are strange, not nightmares, not quite. More like wandering thoughts shaped by hunger and heat. You dream of bread, real bread, with steam curling off the crust. You wake with a start, lips dry, stomach growling. It's not just hunger anymore, it's memory. Your body remembers what it was like to eat warm, and now it won't go back. You start making a new plan the next morning. No more snapping off frozen meat like icicles. No more sucking on ice chips and pretending it's water. You want hot meals every day, and that means fire, planning, and a better way to cook. So you begin to build your next upgrade, the cooking rock. You've heard of it from other mountain men, though most say it with a grin. Some swear by it, others swear at it. But the idea is simple. A flat stone placed deep in the coals that stays warm for hours and radiates heat like an old cast iron stove. If done right, you can cook on it, not just near it. You spend half the day looking for the right one, flat, heavy, with no cracks. The wrong kind will explode when heated. You find it tucked against a slope, half buried in frozen moss. You drag it back like it's treasure. You place it into the fire carefully. Let it warm slow. You don't rush it. Everything out here teaches patience. By dusk, you test it. You slice off a sliver of salted fat and lay it on the rock. It sizzles. You stare like a child seeing magic. You sprinkle dry crumbs into the bubbling grease, mash it together, and eat it right off the edge of your knife. It's ugly food, greasy, barely seasoned, but it's warm, and that changes everything. As you clean your knife with snow, you remember a ridiculous tidbit from a greenhorn back at the post. Some poor soul from back east who swore that carrying a boiled potato in your pocket kept you warm. The old-timers laughed at him. But now, you wonder, maybe heat is heat. You don't have a potato, but you do have hot rocks. So before sleep, you wrap a fist-sized one in hide and tuck it into your bedroll right by your feet. The heat bleeds out slowly as you lie there, your breath thick in the dark, your toes blissfully warm. It's working. All of it. You're not just surviving anymore. You're building systems, tiny routines that stack into something bigger, something that feels almost civilized if you squint. And that's the real shift. You begin to realize that warmth out here isn't a gift, it's a craft. You've got no kitchen, no table, no walls, but you've got fire, fat, stone, and time. And that's enough to make dinner. By now you've got a rhythm. Fire at dusk, beans if you have them, a hot rock tucked in your bedroll like a sleeping pet. You're not comfortable exactly, but the panic is gone. The nights still freeze, the winds still claw, but they don't surprise you anymore. And then one morning you hear a sharp metallic snap. You sit up, heart thumping. It's not a branch, not wind, not animal. It's the trap. You forgot you set it. 2 days ago, in fact. Half out of habit, half out of hunger. You'd picked a spot just beyond the frozen creek, where the snow dips into a natural funnel between trees. You baited it with old meat, strung the wire carefully and walked away. You didn't think it would actually catch anything. But the sound is unmistakable. You throw on your gear, boots still stiff, and jog toward the trap. Your breath clouds thick in the morning air. Snow crunches beneath each step, and then, there it is. A beaver, fat, still. One hind leg caught in the iron jaws. You approach cautiously. The animal's not moving, but you poke it with your rifle barrel just in case. It doesn't stir. Dead, likely only a few hours. Its fur is thick, plush, exactly what you need. You kneel beside it, heart both heavy and grateful. Out here, death is never clean, but it is necessary. You carry the beaver back slung across your shoulder like a sack of soaked wool. By the time you return to camp, your arms ache, but your mind is already focused. Meat, fur, bones, fat. None of it goes to waste. You gut the animal near the stream where the runoff will carry the mess away. It's messy work, smells sharp, coppery. But you've done worse. You skin it slow, careful not to tear. Beaver fur is valuable, warm, dense, and water-resistant. Mountain men traded it for bullets, bread, even medicine. And now you're going to use it for something more personal. Warmth. You stretch the pelt flat between two forked branches near your shelter, scraping it clean with the blade of your hatchet. The flesh peels away like parchment, and you rub ash into the skin, an old method to preserve it until you can smoke it properly. The meat goes into your tin pot mixed with what's left of your biscuit crumbs and a few pine nuts you found days ago. A stew of sorts. A triumph, really. But it's the fat you treasure most. You render it down slowly in your cookpot, the fire low and patient. The smell is intense, but the results? Golden, thick. It coats your fingers, your knife, your spirit. You smear it on your boots, on the inside cuffs of your gloves, across your cheeks. It seals out the cold better than anything cloth or fur can manage. You even dab a bit behind your ears. Why not? Later that night, you sit near the fire, wrapped in your moth-bitten blanket, the beaver pelt drying overhead, the fat hardening in a makeshift jar carved from a split log, and you think, not for the first time, that maybe this is the closest thing to wealth a man can have out here. Not gold, not silver, but a fat beaver on a cold day. You wake to find your breath frozen in delicate lace across the inside of your blanket. It's beautiful in a way, if you weren't sleeping inside it. But the beaver pelt is drying well. Stiff, yes, but the fur's luster hasn't dulled, and the hide's beginning to take on that silvery grey sheen that tells you it'll last. You poke at the fat you rendered last night. It's firmed up now, smooth and waxy like cold soap. You run a thumb across the surface. It resists, then yields. Perfect. You remember a half-drunken trapper once saying, "A man's only as warm as what he rubs on his knees." At the time, you'd laughed. Now, you're greasing your elbows like it's sacred ritual. Beaver grease on boots, on gloves, a thin smear on your rifle stock to keep the wood from cracking. You even rub it onto your eyebrows. Half a joke, half insurance. Today, though, you plan something new. You're going to sleep with the traps. It's not some poetic phrase. Out here, it's a practice. Every mountain man learns it eventually. Traps are tools, yes, but they're also lifelines. You don't leave them to rust in snow or get lifted by curious hands. And when you finally catch something, you don't risk waking up to find your dinner stolen by a fox, a wolverine, or worse, another man. So, tonight, you're dragging 2 iron traps into your shelter. You clear a corner near your feet, line it with bark, and lay the traps side by side like sleeping pets. Their metal frames are cold and unforgiving. One has a blood stain from yesterday. You polish it with snow out of habit. Not for looks, just respect. Beside them, you place your bait, a rag soaked in rendered fat, tied with sinew and tucked inside a chunk of bark. If you don't catch anything tonight, maybe tomorrow, but at least you'll know if something tries, and maybe that's the truth of it. Out here, comfort isn't about plushness. It's about control. You sleep better, knowing your traps are within arm's reach. Your rifle too, your blade tucked under your bedroll. You build your little circle of steel and fire and fur and dare the cold to cross it. Outside, the wind howls again, meaner tonight. A higher pitch, like it's winding through trees that don't want to hold it. You push more coals into your cooking pit, warming a broth of bones and melted snow. You sip it with your eyes closed. The flavour? Unimportant. The heat? Holy. Before bed, you double-check everything. Traps, set, fire, low and safe, pelt, dryan, fat, sealed, rifle, loaded. You lie down beside your tools like a soldier beside his weapons, wrapped in your patchwork layers of hide and hope. And just before sleep takes you, you mutter a phrase you once heard carved into the wall of a trading post latrine. Warmth is a lie you tell the night until morning proves you right. You think that's true, because tonight you're warmer than you have any right to be. You wake before the light breaks, your breath caught mid-cloud, half asleep, half alert. The wind has died. A blessing? Maybe. But out here, stillness is rarely a gift. It's a pause, a warning. You rise slowly, listening. The forest says nothing. No birds, no squirrels. Even the trees seem to be holding their breath. You check the traps. Both are empty. No prints in the snow. No signs of disturbance. Just metal. Silent and cold. You pick one up and it sticks to your bare fingers for half a second before you curse and shake it loose. Skin tears slightly. Not much, but enough to remind you that the rules out here are sharp and stupid. Always. You wrap the bleeding knuckle in a strip of cloth and move on to the morning's work. Today, you've decided it's time. No more shivering in stitched wool and soaked moccasins. No more dreaming about warmth while your coat falls apart thread by thread. You're going to make a coat. Not just any coat. A buffalo robe. A proper one. The kind passed down in stories and trade. The kind that turns snow to steam and laughs in the face of January. There's just one problem. You don't have a buffalo. Yet. But you know where to find one. 2 valleys over, past the split ridge and the half-frozen stream that smells like sulphur, there's a place. The crow called it Red Hollow. They said buffalo winter there sometimes, pressed close to the cliffs where the wind can't reach. It's a long walk, and there's no guarantee of anything waiting for you except exhaustion. But what's the alternative? Another week patching rags? Stuffing moss under your shirt? No. You make the call. You pack light, flint, blade, rifle, 2 strips of dried meat, and a strip of beaver fat to chew. You lash snowshoes to your feet with rawhide and start walking before the sky even softens to blue. It's cold, very cold. Your breath crystallizes and falls like ash behind you. Your footsteps creak across the snow with a rhythm that becomes strangely meditative. Left, right, left, right. Hours pass. The sun rises behind your shoulder but offers no heat, only light. You crest the first ridge and pause for water, scooped snow melted in your mouth as you walk. Your lips split with salt, but your legs don't stop. The second ridge is steeper. You dig your snowshoes in like claws, pulling yourself upward with every muscle. By the time you reach the top, your thighs burn, and your fingers are stiff from gripping your rifle too tightly. But then you see it. Below, tucked against the base of the far cliff, a slow-moving shadow shifts across the white. A buffalo. 2, in fact. Maybe more. Dark shapes, breathing steam, their shaggy coats rimed with ice and dignity. They don't run. They barely move. They're conserving energy, just like you. You crouch low, heart thudding. You won't take a shot today. Not yet. The light is wrong, the snow too open. But now you know. Red Hollow lives up to its name, and tomorrow, if the weather holds, you'll return with your shot. You spend the night high above Red Hollow, curled beneath a crooked pine, half covered in snow for camouflage and warmth. The wind is mercifully mild and the slope blocks most of it, but it's still a long, cold wait. You don't sleep, not properly. You nod off in fragments, always listening, always gripping the rifle across your chest like a lifeline. You're waiting for morning, yes, but more than that, you're waiting for the buffalo to shift just a little closer, just enough for one good shot. As the sky turns the pale grey of pre-dawn, you rub warmth into your fingers and check the slope below. The herd has moved, only slightly, maybe 20 yards to the east, but that's enough. One bull, larger than the rest, lags behind near a rocky overhang. Old, perhaps. Slower. You don't need a whole herd. You need one. You move into position slowly, on your belly, rifle forward, breath controlled. You think about what the French trader said at the post weeks ago. You only ever earn a buffalo once. After that, you're just living in its shadow. You hadn't understood it then. You do now. The rifle shakes, not from fear, but from cold, from anticipation, from the weight of the moment pressing down on your shoulders like snow on a pine branch. You squeeze the trigger. The shot echoes like thunder. The rest of the herd scatters, dark blurs pounding across white. But the old bull stumbles, shudders, and falls heavy into the snow. You wait a full minute before moving. 100 things could still go wrong. Injury, missed vitals, retaliation. But when you finally stand and approach, rifle ready, you see it clearly. It's done. The buffalo is still, breathless, monumental. You kneel beside it, both humbled and exhausted. The creature's hide is vast, thicker than anything you've ever worked with. The head alone is the size of your torso. The heat still radiates from its chest, steaming into the air like a sacrifice. You don't have time to waste. You gut it fast, hands red and steaming in the cold. You slice along memory, not instruction. Because no one teaches you how to skin something this large in these conditions. You take the robe whole, or as whole as you can manage, then pack meat into your sled and begin the slow haul back. It takes you all day. Your shoulders scream. Your legs cramp. You slip once and nearly lose the whole thing into a ravine. But by the time you stagger into camp, the sun is low and the sky is soaked in gold. You drape the hide over your shelter, the fur catching the light like velvet. Even unprocessed, it already insulates better than all your layers combined. You build your fire strong, warm a stew of buffalo fat and scraps, and sit beside the drying hide, too tired to eat, too full of triumph to sleep. That night, wrapped in your old blanket beneath the hanging robe of the fallen giant, you feel something you haven't felt since leaving the post. Security. The cold still creeps, the wind still howls, but for once, you know, you've got the upper hand. There's a strange feeling, waking up warm. Not hot, nothing out here ever is, but warm enough that your fingers bend without cracking, and your breath doesn't curl into panic the moment your eyes open. The buffalo robe worked. Even half-dried and stiff with blood, it's heavy enough to trap your body heat like a sealed cabin. You lie there a moment longer than usual, listening to the wind whisper against your shelter wall. The world feels muted, distant. But that doesn't mean safe, because today isn't about warmth, it's about protection. Last night something rustled just beyond the firelight. Not wind, not snow. Something slower, softer. You didn't see it, but you felt it. That cold itch between your shoulder blades. The kind of chill that has nothing to do with weather. So today, you don't wander, you prepare. First rule of mountain living, never let your guard down. Second rule, sleep with your rifle. You reach over and grip the stock. Still there, still loaded, still warm from being wrapped in hide overnight. You inspect it anyway. Powder's dry, barrel's clean, no frost in the breech. You think of the old trapper back at the post who'd lost 2 fingers to a misfire in January. Claimed it was the cold's fault, but word was he'd fallen asleep without clearing snow from the muzzle. Another example of how mistakes out here don't come with warnings, just consequences. You rise, step outside and scan the perimeter. Nothing obvious, but there are signs. Scratched bark on a nearby spruce, displaced snow around a patch of low brush, and, barely visible, a single oval-shaped print. Too big for a fox, too long for a rabbit. Mountain lion? Maybe. You move slowly, back into the shelter, and begin fortifying. You take the spare buffalo hide, the parts too torn or bloody for clothing, and drape it along the lower wall to block drafts. Then you turn your attention to your sleeping space. Your new habit begins, sleeping with your rifle under your arm, not beside you, not near you, under you. You lie down, the barrel running along your side, tucked tight under your coat. It's not comfortable, but it's comforting. And just in case you add more, you sharpen 3 sticks and wedge them into the snow near the opening of your shelter, angled out like primitive caltrops. It's not a fortress, but it'll slow something down, or at least wake you up. You heat a stone and tuck it near your feet. The fire stays small tonight. Low flames, low risk. You don't want to signal anything wandering nearby. The scent of meat already draws enough interest. Buffalo stew might as well be a flare. You eat quickly, no ceremony, no pleasure, just fuel. Then you set a pan near the opening, an old trick you read in a journal left behind by a French fur trader. If something approaches, it'll knock the tin and make noise. Primitive, sure, but effective. You lie down, blanket over buffalo robe, rifle tucked under arm, listening, not for sleep, for everything else. The night doesn't creep in. It falls, hard and sudden. 1 minute your firelight flickers gently against the buffalo hide. The next, it's the only light for miles. The mountains seem to lean in closer after dark, their ridgelines no longer distant guardians, but looming silhouettes that block the stars. You lie back, the rifle nestled beneath your coat, warmth tucked around you like a second skin. But your ears, wide open, every sound, every crack, snap, crunch is a possible warning. And then it comes. Clink. The pan outside shifts. Not a gust, not a drift falling from the roof. It's sharper than that, metal against ice. You stop breathing. You strain to listen, blood pounding like a drum inside your ears. Nothing moves, not outside, not inside. But the silence is different now, charged. Like a room where someone's holding their breath on the other side of the door. You ease upright, slow as sap, and grip the rifle. Then, another sound. Not the pan this time. Snow. Compressed. Under weight. You reach for the small sliver of dried pine bark you've been keeping near the fire. One strike from your flint, and it flares just enough to cast a glow across the shelter. And there, just outside the low entrance, barely more than a shadow in the gloom, is movement. Low. Fluid. Feline. You don't need more detail, your gut knows. Mountain lion. It hasn't charged. Not yet. It's curious. Maybe hungry. Maybe just cautious. But it's there. You freeze. 1 breath. 2. You slowly lift the rifle. Barrel forward. Resting just above the stone threshold of your shelter. You won't fire unless it enters. Powder is precious and noise is danger. But you keep your cheek pressed against the stock. Eyes steady. Finger ready. The lion blinks, its eyes catching the firelight like twin coins. Then it turns. No hurry, just a pivot of muscle and tail as if it never really considered you food at all, and disappears into the dark. You don't move for a long time. Only when the wind returns, gentle, harmless, do you let the rifle fall. You ease the fire back to life just enough to cast warmth across your boots. You don't sleep. Not really. You drift, but your hand never leaves the woodstock of your weapon, and come morning, with snow drifted up against the shelter wall, you feel something new. Not fear, not relief, but respect. That mountain lion did what every man out here must do: stalk carefully, take no unnecessary risks, and know when to walk away from the firelight. You check your traps, still empty. You check your boots, still dry. You check your rifle, still loaded. And you say to yourself, quiet, like a promise. You sleep alone out here, but never unarmed. It starts with a squish. You take a step and feel it. Soft, wet, wrong. Not snow, not mud, rot. You lift your boot and groan. The sole is split again. The deer hide you stitched last week is wearing thin, and moisture has crept in overnight. Your toes are damp. Worse, the smell hits you. A foul mix of mould, wet leather, and something else. Something sour. This is how frostbite starts. Not in the blizzards, but in the quiet rot of forgotten corners. You sit down, peeling off your moccasins. The lining, pine moss and cloth scraps, is soaked through. Your socks, if you can still call them that, are little more than threads. You remember what the old man at Fort Laramie said: "You lose your feet, you lose the game." He'd held up 2 stumps as proof, laughing like it was a bar story. You didn't laugh then. You sure aren't laughing now. The Rockies don't care how warm your shelter is if your feet rot from the bottom up. You need boots. Real ones. But leather is in short supply, so you turn to something unconventional. The half-frozen boots of the dead. There's an abandoned camp not far from here. You passed it days ago on your way to Red Hollow, a collapsed shelter, wind-wrecked and half-buried in snow. At the time, you didn't stop. Something about it felt wrong. Still does. But now, you don't have a choice. You head out after lunch, following your own faint boot tracks until you spot the crumpled frame of a canvas tent, shredded by wind sagging under old snow. Bones poke from a mound nearby, not buried, just left. You crouch low, press your hand to the snow beside them. Cold, still, but not recent. You spot the boots. They're curled like fists, the leather warped by moisture and time, but intact. Thick soles, cracked uppers, one still laced. You don't ask permission, you just take them. Back at camp you strip them down. Carefully. You carve out the mouldy lining, scrub them with snow and a stiff branch. You boil a pouch of spruce resin and smear it inside. Not perfect, but a sealant. Then you pack them with dry moss and let them smoke beside the fire for hours. By sundown they're stiff but wearable. You cut strips of hide from the scrap pile and reinforce the heels. Stitch a tongue into the right boot where the leather had split. You even carve a tiny toe plug from pine to wedge into the left, where a hole lets in wind. You slip them on. They're heavy, misshapen, but warm. You wiggle your toes, they move. That's all that matters. Out here, you learn to take what others leave behind, even the dead, especially the dead. Because sometimes surviving means stepping where someone else fell and making sure you don't land the same way. You wear the boots that night like they're made of gold, heavy, cracked, and full of stories you'd rather not know, but they're warm. Your toes stay dry. That alone feels like a small miracle. Still, something sits heavy in your chest as you lie there, the fire low and the wind slow rolling over your camp. You picture the man who owned them. What did he die of? Starvation? Cold? Wolves? Maybe he fell asleep thinking he'd be fine. Maybe he never woke. The thought follows you into sleep. When you wake, you've made a decision. You'll never die lying down. You're up before the sun, boots laced tight, traps in hand. You hike west toward a frozen gully where you saw rabbit tracks 2 days ago. The cold bites at your cheeks, but your feet, Your patched, scavenged, reclaimed feet. Stay warm. That changes everything. The snow is clean, unbroken, until it isn't. Tracks, fresh ones. You crouch, rabbit. 2, maybe 3. They're erratic, zigzagging between shrubs like panic on pause. You follow them a short way, boots crunching with dull thuds against the ice, and then you find it. Proof you're not the only one hunting. A snare. Old. Frayed. Sprung. Nothing inside, but someone else made it. You glance around, scanning the trees. No movement, no smoke. Just silence. Still. You're not alone anymore. Back at camp you think hard. You tighten your trap line. Recheck your firewood. Reinforce the stones around your cook fire. You don't know who else is out here, but they're close enough to set snares in your shadow. That night, you oil your boots with the last of the rendered fat. The smell reminds you of the buffalo kill. You sit by the fire, stretching the stiff leather with your hands, remembering how desperate you felt 2 days ago. You're not desperate now. These boots might have belonged to the dead, but you walk differently in them. Not softer, smarter. Because it's not the cold that gets you in the end. It's forgetting that every comfort comes with a cost. Tomorrow you'll return to that gully. Maybe the other trapper left something behind. Maybe they'll return. Maybe they're watching already. But tonight, you sleep with your boots on, just in case. It starts with a cough. Not yours, his. At first it blends with the wind, just another crackle in the timber. But then it comes again. Wet, rattling, unmistakably human. You freeze, halfway through scraping snow from the edge of your fire pit. For a moment, you don't move at all. Then slowly you lower the hatchet and listen. Another cough, closer. You rise. The first rule you learned out here is simple. You're never as alone as you think. You grab your rifle, sling it low and loose across your chest and step out of the shelter. And there he is, leaning against a crooked pine, maybe 20 yards off, slouched, wrapped in fur but barely. One glove, face sunburnt and cracked. He doesn't raise a hand, doesn't wave, just stands there swaying slightly. You approach slow, gun down but eyes sharp. He's not young. Mid-50s, maybe older, cheeks hollow, lips blistered. The coat he wears is stitched from 3 others, none of which fit. One of his boots is wrapped in bark. You say nothing, just meet his eyes. He coughs again and rasps. Ain't seen fire in 4 days. You nod and gesture toward your camp. He follows without a word. You set him by the fire and pour what's left of your warm water into a tin. He drinks like it's whiskey. Only after that do you ask. Name? Roy, he croaks. Used to trap out near the Gallatin. Got caught in that squall last week. Lost my sled. Lost my dog. Found this ridge by luck. You glance down at his hands. Fingers blue at the tips. Frostbite creeping in. He sees your eyes and gives a crooked grin. Don't suppose you got extra toes lying around? You don't laugh. You've seen how this ends, and Roy's only halfway there. Still, you feed him. Small bites, hot broth, a bit of buffalo fat spread on biscuit crust. His hands tremble around the tin cup, but he eats every drop. Then he looks at your shelter, at your walls reinforced with snow, the buffalo hide overhead, the boots by the fire, the stones packed just so. He studies it like a man remembering something long forgotten. You been out here long? He asks. Long enough. Roy nods. Too long, maybe. Cold starts making a man soft, makes him forget things. You raise an eyebrow. He smiles, sad and thin. You ever wake up warm and think you don't got to try so hard? That's when it starts. That's when you go soft. You stop sharpening your knife. You sleep past first light. You don't check your traps. You nod slowly, because you know he's right. Roy shifts, pulls the fur tighter around himself. I had a partner once, 2 winters ago. Name was Ellis. Strong. Smarter than me. One day he built the fire too high and burned out the snow wall. Whole shelter caved in while we slept. Woke up choking on smoke and coughing up ice. You don't ask what happened to Ellis. You don't have to. You know what Roy's really saying? Warmth is dangerous. Because once you stop fearing the cold, you stop respecting it. You let Roy sleep near the fire, wrapped in your spare blanket and half the buffalo robe. He curls into himself like a man half remembering how to be human. His boots, if you can call them that, are drying by the stones, steaming faintly. You toss the bark wrapping and stuff them with moss and cloth. They might hold. You watch him from your side of the shelter, chewing the last of the charred meat. He doesn't snore, doesn't twitch, just lies there breathing like each inhale might be his last. And the strange part, you miss being alone. It hits you around midnight, this tiny traitorous thought. You've spent so long surviving solo, moving by instinct, guarding every movement, that now, with another human near, your rhythm is off. Your firelight has to stretch farther. Your silence is broken by breath that isn't yours. And most of all, you can't sleep with both eyes shut. Still, you know better than to turn him away. The Rockies don't let a man survive without help more than a season or two. Not unless he's willing to become something else, something closer to a shadow than a person. Roy wakes just before dawn, coughing hard, eyes blurry but alert. He nods toward your rifle. Sleeping with it? You nod. He smiles. Good. That means you're still alive in the head. You brew up pine needle tea, mostly for the warmth, but Roy sips it like medicine. Says it tastes like boiled broom bristles, but drinks it anyway. While the water's heating, you ask, "You planning to stay long?" He shrugs. "Just long enough to get strong, then I'll head south. Too cold up here for a man with fingers this blue." You both know the truth. He won't make it to spring, but neither of you says it. Instead you talk gear. Roy shows you how he used to tie his snowshoes with bone splinters to keep the frame from slipping. You show him the pan trick, how you sleep with it at your feet to catch intruders. He grins, coughs, and says, "That's a clever way not to die." He teaches you how to use a strip of rawhide as a binding for cracked boot heels. Says it shrinks tight as iron when dried. You file it away in your mind like gold. But that night, after he's asleep again, you can't shake what he said earlier about softness. You think about your routines, how careful you've been. Every task done with intention, every motion measured, not because you're strong, but because you're scared. And maybe that's what's kept you alive. You glance over at Roy, twitching under the blanket, breath catching in his throat. He got soft, got used to being warm, stopped checking the traps, let his boots rot, trusted luck. The cold doesn't kill all at once. It waits, watches. Then it moves in like debt, collecting when you finally stopped guarding the door. You tighten your rifle strap, check the fire, add 2 more logs, and whisper to the dark, "Not me, not tonight." The snow starts before sunrise. Not a soft drift, not a gentle fall, a whiteout. You wake to silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, smothered kind. Every sound outside is muffled. Your shelter creaks faintly under the weight. Roy is still sleeping, buried under furs, coughing in his dreams. You step outside and the world is gone. Where there was forest, there's now a curtain of swirling white. Trees are reduced to grey smudges. The ridge you've used to navigate north is invisible. Even your own footprints vanish within minutes. This is when the Rockies get cruel. Snow blindness isn't some dramatic myth. It's real and fast. One wrong step, and you could walk in circles for hours thinking you're heading downhill when you're climbing. Worse, you could walk right off a ledge. So today, You don't go far. You reinforce the camp, build snow barriers higher, add another beam to the buffalo hide roof. You burn through most of your firewood, drying gear, boiling snow, staying warm. Every few hours you step out with a line of cord tied to your waist, stretching it between the shelter and the nearest tree. A lifeline. You check the traps once, but can barely see 2 feet ahead. One snare has vanished, buried. Another is iced over, nothing caught. You let it go. Back inside, Roy watches you work. Whiteouts, he mutters, pulling the blanket tight. They don't kill you with snow, they kill you with lost. You nod. You feel it. The weight of being cut off from everything. The way time dissolves inside the white. The way your own breath feels like noise. You remember something you read. An old army survival manual with pages soaked in coffee and mould. It said, "In whiteout conditions, keep moving only if you know where you're going. If you don't, stop, build, wait." So that's what you do. You take the time to sort your gear, sharpen your blade, repack your flint and kindling into tighter bundles, inventory your food, not much, but enough for 5 days if you ration hard. Roy helps where he can, shows you how to lash your snowshoes with strips of buffalo hide instead of raw cord so they don't freeze solid. You thank him. You even find time to scrape the buffalo hide again, working it soft with a rounded stone, shaving curls from the inside until it stops cracking and starts folding. It will make a proper outer coat soon. Heavy, yes, but warmer than anything a man can trade for. But all the while the snow keeps falling. Hour after hour it piles higher. You've weathered storms. But this is something else. It doesn't rage. It just persists. No drama, no thunder, just cold, silent erasure. By nightfall, even the smoke from your fire struggles to rise. The air is too thick, too damp. You seal the shelter tight and hope the stone chimney still breathes. You sleep sitting upright just in case, because if the shelter seals too well, you'll smother in your sleep, and if it doesn't seal well enough, you'll freeze. That's the bargain the mountain offers tonight. Morning doesn't come, not in the usual way. The whiteout hasn't lifted. If anything, the world has grown quieter, as though sound itself has frozen and refuses to thaw. There's no sun, just a vague glow behind the swirling white, like a lantern seen through frosted glass. You light the fire again. The smoke curls lazily, uncertain. It rises at an angle you don't like. Too slow, too low. That means the air's heavy, damp. You crack open the top of the shelter, shovel out snow with your tin bowl and let the chimney breathe. Inside, Roy stirs. "Still snowing," he croaks. You nod. He doesn't even bother looking. You boil snow for water, add pine bark shavings to stretch the flavour. The resin numbs your mouth, but it beats plain ice. You eat the last of the dried meat together, one strip each, and chew slow, like it might grow back. You talk, not much, just enough to remind yourselves you're human. Roy tells you about a winter he spent farther north near the Three Forks. Claims he got so lost in a storm, he made camp inside a hollow tree for 5 days, eating birch bark stew and sleeping upright so his boots wouldn't freeze to the ground. You don't know if it's true, doesn't matter, it passes the time. Later, when the fire burns low, you step outside again. The line you tied from shelter to tree is now buried under 6 inches of fresh snow. You follow it carefully, retying sections, marking the way with broken branches stuck upright like guideposts. Then, something strange. A shape. A dip in the snow, low and unnatural. Not an animal trail. A slide mark. As if something heavy was dragged. Or someone. You crouch. Brush it with your glove. The print is old, smoothed by hours of snow, but it's there, and it's not yours. You follow it for maybe 20 paces before it disappears completely. Back at camp, Roy watches you enter and says nothing. You don't speak either. There's no need. You both know someone else passed through this storm, maybe watching, maybe lost, maybe worse. Out here, silence is just another voice with teeth. That night, you don't sleep. You sit by the fire, back to the wall, rifle across your knees, ears tuned to every groan of the snowpack above you. Your traps are useless in weather like this. Your food's gone, and Roy's fingers are starting to turn grey. The cold isn't trying to kill you anymore. It's waiting for you to do it for him. By accident, by fatigue, by a single misstep in a world where the sky has vanished and the ground is a lie. In your lap, the rifle is warm from your hands. You tighten your grip. You whisper, not to Roy, not to yourself, but to the mountain. I'm still here. No answer, just snow, always snow. You wake to a silence so complete. It roars. No wind, no breath. Not even the whisper of falling snow. Just the weight of stillness pressing on your chest like a stone. You roll onto your side, brush frost from your lashes, and glance toward the shelter opening. It's gone. Buried. Where there should be a thin slit of light, there's only a wall of solid white. The snow has swallowed you whole. Your heart thumps once, loud in your ribs. You sit up fast, brushing snow off the buffalo robe. The air is thick, wet, cold, but not sharp. That's worse. Wet cold is the kind that seeps into your lungs, into your bones. You take a breath, then another. Still alive, still air. But not for long. You scramble to the front of the shelter and dig, first with your gloves, then with your tin bowl. The snow is dense and hard-packed, the kind that kills slow. You dig faster. Your breath fogs heavy, then less. You dig until your arms ache, until your shoulders burn, until... light. A thin crack of grey. You widen it, gasping the second it opens enough to push your face through. Air rushes in, cold and clean and brutal. You cough, blinking against the sudden brightness. The snowbank outside towers above the shelter like a frozen wave caught mid-collapse. But you've made a hole, and now you know what to do. Back inside, Roy is sitting upright, staring at the sealed ceiling like a man who's had this dream before. Snow caved in, you say. He nods slowly. Thought so. Could have died. He nods again. You don't waste time. You open the chimney hole wider, pack a stick through the vent as a breathing post. Then you cut a wider tunnel toward the front, digging a sloped path out and down, shaping the snow into a curved arch to keep it from collapsing again. It takes all morning, but when it's done, you have light, air, and, most importantly, a way out. Roy helps where he can. His fingers are clumsy. One of them's gone black. You don't mention it. Instead, you hand him a hot stone wrapped in hide and press it into his chest. Keep that close, you say. Sleep with it if you have to. I already sleep with a stranger, he mutters, nodding toward your rifle, which hasn't left your lap in 2 days. You both manage a chuckle, not because it's funny, but because it means you're still thinking like people. After lunch, if you can call melted snow and pine bark soup lunch, you inspect the snowbank outside more carefully. That's when you see it. A dent. Faint, but there. Just to the left of your tunnel, buried beneath a layer of powder. A line, sharp-edged. Not natural, it's too clean. You dig with your gloved hands, gently brushing away the layers until it reveals itself. A boot print. Fresh. Frozen. Human. Someone walked over your shelter while you were trapped inside. Did they know you were there? Did they pause? Or did they just keep walking, vanishing into the white like a ghost on patrol? You don't say anything to Roy. Not yet. But that night, as you pull the buffalo robe around your shoulders and curl near the fire, You sleep with your rifle cradled in both arms, barrel pointed at the snow wall, just in case it walks back. You don't sleep much that night. Every creak of settling snow, every groan of the pine beams overhead sounds louder than it should. You're not sure if it's the print outside or just the way the cold seems to twist everything into a warning. Either way, your eyes stay open long after the fire dies down. Roy doesn't notice. He's drifting in and out now, his breathing a gravelly rattle that comes in uneven pulls. The black on his fingers is spreading. You caught him trying to hide them this morning, tucking them under the blanket like a child hiding a bad report card. You didn't say anything. You just handed him another stone and told him to keep it close. Outside, the whiteout has eased into a low fog. Still no sun, but at least shapes have returned to the world. Trees, outlines of rocks. Your breath trails like smoke as you step out of the tunnel and look around. The boot print is still there, untouched. You squat beside it, study its shape, narrow heel, sharp tread. Not yours, not Roy's, and too clean to be old. It passed over your camp after the last snow during the storm. Someone was walking in zero visibility, alone, and stepped right over your buried shelter. You scan the ridge. No other prints, no return trail. They didn't come back. You follow the direction of the track for maybe 50 paces before it disappears into a drift. No sign of struggle, no blood. Just gone. Back at camp, Roy is boiling pine needles again. His hands shake, but he still manages. You sit down, say nothing, and let the silence wrap around you both like a damp wool coat. After a while, he says, "You think it was someone?" You glance over. What else would it be? He shrugs. Ghost. Lost hunter. Cold don't care. You don't reply. Not because he's wrong, but because he's too right. That afternoon, you prep for another night. The fire pit gets fresh stones. Your water skins, one made from a buffalo bladder, the other from a stretched fur scrap, are filled and tucked beside the fire to keep from freezing. You restock the food pouch. 1 piece of fat, 2 bark biscuits, and a strip of dried meat that tastes like leather soaked in smoke. And then, just before sundown, you drag your sled up the ridge to scout. You don't expect to find anything, but you do. Tucked beneath a crooked pine, nearly buried in drift, is a camp. Small, abandoned. Just a ring of stones, a half-collapsed lean-to, and a pile of frozen cloth. You brush the snow away and find the remains of a pack. Moulded leather, torn strap. Inside, a rusted knife, a flask half full of brackish water, and, folded in oilskin, a single, handwritten letter. You don't read it. Not now. Not here. You pack everything up and return to camp in the dark. That night, you sit, beside the fire, turning the flask over in your hand, listening to Roy snore faintly behind you. You're not sure what unnerves you more, that someone was out here, or that they're not anymore. Either way, the mountains just whispered something back, and now they're waiting for your answer. By morning, the fog lifts. What it leaves behind is worse. A brittle cold snaps into the air, sharper than anything you've felt yet. Your breath freezes the moment it leaves your mouth, clinging to your beard like hoarfrost. The snow under your boots squeaks. Dry, compact, treacherous. That sound means one thing. The temperature's dropped hard, probably below 20 below. You check Roy first. He's still asleep, face hollowed by fever, the black creeping up his fingers like ink spilled on a map. You leave a stone wrapped in hide near his chest and step outside. Your plan today is simple. Use the meat. You've hoarded enough now. Scraps from the buffalo, a rabbit caught in a snare 3 days ago, and what's left of the frozen fat from the beaver. It's not a feast, but it's something. And you remember what that old trapper once muttered after biting into a frozen squirrel. It ain't just what you eat, it's how warm it makes your bones. So you're going to render it down, all of it. and feed the heat back into your body. First, the fire. You dig a new pit, deeper this time, lined with hot stones. You build it low, careful, feeding it slowly so it stays hot longer. The wind is hungry today. One gust can strip your fire to embers in seconds. Next, the meat. You slice it thin, mix it with chunks of congealed fat, and toss in slivers of bone marrow you cracked open with your axe. It's an old trick, borrowed from the Métis. Boil the bones until the broth thickens like glue, a meal and a medicine. The scent rises as it simmers, sharp, smoky, and oddly sweet. It draws something primal from your belly. Even Roy stirs at the smell, sitting up slowly, blinking like a man waking from a long winter inside himself. He doesn't ask what it is. He just eats, small bites, slow. You eat beside him, holding your tin close to your chest between sips. The heat crawls down your throat into your stomach and spreads. Your fingers stop shaking. Your toes twitch inside the dead man's boots. Your eyelids sag, not from exhaustion, but from the first flicker of real warmth in days. Afterward, Roy leans back and mutters, "That stew could bring a man back from the grave." You nod. That's the idea. But deep down you know it won't be enough. Roy's not coming back. The black has reached his knuckles, his cough has deepened, and sometimes when you speak he takes a few seconds too long to respond, as if the words have to push through snowdrifts just to reach him. Still, you feed him, warm him, sharpen his knife out of respect. Because you know the truth. There's something worse than dying in the mountains. It's dying cold. You learn that from the grizzly. Not the beast itself, but its warmth. You remember it clearly. 2 winters ago, before the pass froze over, you and another trapper found one, dead from a fall, half buried in snow. You slept inside its hollowed-out cavity that night, pressed shoulder to rib, wrapped in steaming hide. It saved your life. You don't tell Roy that story. But as you sip the last of your stew and glance at the man beside you, shivering, sunken and slipping, you can't help but think, there are worse ways to go than in good company, with hot food in your gut and a fire crackling at your feet. That night Roy tells you he's going south. His voice is quiet. Not a plan. Not even a wish. Just a thought spoken aloud, like a dream slipping out between breaths. Soon as I can stand, he says, I'll head for Snake River. Maybe find a trader. Maybe catch a raft down toward Fort Hall. You don't argue, but you both know the truth. Roy can barely sit up. His fingers are stiff, 3 now, black to the knuckle. He hides them in his coat like they're shameful, not dying. But you see, every time he grips a cup, every time he reaches for the ladle, his movements are slower, measured, fading. You feed the fire and don't reply. Because what do you say to a man who won't survive the trail? You give him the stew again, this time richer. You've been saving a few strips of marrow fat. Now you boil them down into a thick, almost sticky broth. Roy gulps it, sighs, then stares into the flames like they might give him a different future. I used to be good at this, he mumbles. You glance over. Living out here, trapping, making things last, didn't used to be so hard. It's not the cold, you say without thinking. It's time. He smiles, a thin, crooked thing. Time and cold make a mean pair. You nod. That night, you sleep light. Not from fear, not even because of the print you found 2 days ago, but because the air has changed. The wind has died down entirely. And in the mountains, that's often the calm before something worse. You wake before dawn. The fire's low. Roy hasn't stirred. You crawl over, careful not to make noise, and place your hand near his mouth. Still breathing, barely. You don't light the fire yet. You sit with him a while. watching the way the shadows flicker across his face. You think of the men you've lost, of the one who froze sitting upright under a tree, hands folded, eyes open like he'd just blinked too slow. Roy isn't there yet, but he's close. You take the buffalo robe, the warmest piece you own, and drape it over him. He stirs slightly. "Don't get soft," he mutters. You don't answer. You just slide the rifle across your lap and sit beside him, while the shelter creaks gently under a new layer of snow. A few hours later, when the sun finally pushes through the clouds and casts a pale line of gold across the snow, you rise. Outside, the air smells strange, sharp, metallic. The kind of cold that doesn't just bite, it waits. You look out across the white hills at the trails no longer visible, the world buried beneath weeks of winter. And you know, it's time to start thinking beyond survival. It's time to prepare for the thaw, because the cold isn't just a killer, it's a test, and you're not failing yet. The storm doesn't return, but something worse does. Stillness. The kind that makes the forest feel hollow, like the world's taken a breath but refuses to exhale. You step outside and the snow no longer swirls. It just sits, layered high, dry, silent. The air is brittle, so dry it pulls the moisture straight from your nose and lips. The sky is blue, painfully blue, cloudless and cruel. You glance back at the shelter. Roy hasn't moved. You know better than to check right away. Instead, you do the chores. Fire, snow melted for water, traps checked. Nothing caught. Not surprising. Nothing moves in cold like this. You work slower than usual, conserving strength, mind half numb from the creeping quiet. Then you go back in. Roy's still breathing. Barely. You sit beside him and eat a scrap of cold biscuit. He opens one eye, looks at it like it's treasure, and laughs once, dry and cracked. "You ever talk to your gear?" he asks. You raise an eyebrow. He smiles faintly. "Couple winters back, I started giving names to mine. My knife was Lucy. My pan was Fred." "Let me guess," you say. "Fred kept things hot and Lucy was sharp," Roy chuckles. "Exactly." You don't tell him you've done the same, that your rifle, though nameless, feels more like company than a tool, that sometimes, when the wind howls too long, you hum to it just to hear a voice. Out here, the line between solitude and madness is a hair's breadth wide, and thins every time the fire dies. You brew pine tea and pass Roy a cup. He fumbles it, nearly spills it all. You catch it mid-drop, steady his hands, and hold the tin to his lips. He sips. Then, "You ever get lonely?" You don't answer right away, because the truth is strange. You haven't felt lonely, not exactly. Not since the first week. That kind of hunger burns fast and then goes quiet. What you feel now is different. Less sharp, like the shadow of a voice behind a wall. You remember company more than you miss it. But yes, you nod. Roy exhales long. "I started naming the trees once. Gave one a birthday. It was in February." You both laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's true. You go quiet again. The silence grows heavy. That's when it hits you. Cabin fever isn't about madness. Not the wild kind anyway. It's about weight. The weight of stillness. Of days blending into each other. Of thoughts bouncing off walls with nowhere to go. The cold doesn't get you first. The silence does. You stand, needing movement, needing something to do. You grab the knife and start reshaping the snow wall around the fire pit. Pointless work, maybe, but work nonetheless. "Behind you," Roy says. "I dreamed I was in a room with no corners, just spinning." You pause, then say, "Well, this place has corners, ugly ones." "Good," he says. "Don't let the walls go smooth." You finish reshaping the wall, not because it needed it, but because your hands needed purpose. Back inside, the fire crackles low, a rhythm you've come to rely on more than your own thoughts. Roy is still talking more now, not delirious, just drifting. His words come like smoke, thin, slow, and curling in odd directions. You ever notice the snow sounds different when it falls straight down, he says, eyes half closed. You nod. You've noticed. It hisses instead of patters, like the forest is whispering through its teeth. Roy smiles faintly. That's the kind of thing you only hear when you've been alone too long. You say nothing. He's right. Outside, the snowpack is rising again. Not a storm. Just steady, persistent flakes, thick enough to blur the trees into smudges. You feed the fire and start boiling snow for water. Again. You've done it 100 times now. Your hands move on autopilot. But your mind is elsewhere. You think about the things you've said to no one. The way you mutter when the fire won't catch. The way you thank your knife when it cuts clean. The way you scold the sky when it lies about the weather. You think about the stories you've told. To the snow, to the fire, to the silence. Stories about home. About what you'll do when you return. About what you won't do. And then you realize you've been speaking to the mountain every day, in every small ritual, every repaired seam, every rationed scrap. You're not just surviving in the Rockies, you're negotiating, trading your sanity in small coins for warmth, safety, and just one more day. That night, Roy falls asleep talking. You don't stop him. His voice, though hoarse, is human. It keeps the silence away. You listen with your eyes closed as he rambles about a woman he knew in Helena, how she smelled like wet leaves, how her father taught him to snare muskrats, how he lost 2 fingers not to frostbite, but to a bear that thought a trapline was dinner. He trails off halfway through a sentence and doesn't start again. You don't wake him. Instead, you get up and rebuild the windbreak, now sagging from snow. You add a second layer to the roof. You double-check the fire pit stones, stacking them tighter. You even carve a notch into your rifle stock, not to count days, but just something to mark this night from the others. And when all of that is done, you sit back down beside Roy, stare into the flames and whisper, "Happy birthday, pine tree." You chuckle at yourself, then stop. Because what's strange isn't that you said it, it's that it helped. Out here, the lines between crazy and clever blur fast. Maybe that's what the mountain wants. Not strength, not skill, but surrender. Not in defeat, but in conversation. So you talk, out loud, to Roy, to the fire, to the roof of your snow cave shelter, because you're not afraid of going mad. You're afraid of going silent. You wake to a smell you haven't known in weeks. Green, not pine, not firewood. Something softer, faint, alive. You blink, nose twitching, and sit up slowly. Roy is still breathing, barely. The fire's gone to ash. But something outside has changed. You step into the light and squint, and there it is. The first sign of spring. A patch of ground no wider than a boot print, bare and dark and wet. Snow melting along the south face of a nearby boulder, revealing soil beneath, matted with last autumn's leaves, now damp and thawing. It's nothing, and it's everything. You crouch and touch it with your fingertips. Mud, cold, slick, and thick with scent. You breathe deep. It smells like memory, like rivers that run again, like grass that dares. You glance at the trees, and though most are still wrapped in snow, the upper branches show buds. Tiny nubs, but real. The thaw has begun. Back at camp, you check your gear with new eyes. Your boots, barely holding. Your traps, half rusted. Your coat, blood-stiff and patched with dreams. Everything is frayed. Everything is tired, like you. But spring doesn't care what's frayed. It moves forward anyway. You start boiling water, not for food this time, for a wash. You strip to your base layer and scrub with snowmelt until your skin stings and your breath gasps out in clouds. You scrape the grit from your face, the soot from your wrists. You even wash your socks, not because it'll help the holes, but because it feels like returning. Roy stirs as you hang your shirt to dry on a branch. You look like a man who just got baptized, he rasps. You smile. Something like that. He nods. Then, after a pause, says, "It's time, isn't it?" You know what he means. The moment is coming when the mountain will stop holding you in place, when the cold will no longer be a wall but a door, when the snow will shrink and reveal paths again, the creeks will run, the game will return, and the solitude will grow loud enough to chase you down the slopes. "I'm not sure where I'll go," you say, more to yourself than to him. Roy chuckles, dry. "That's how you know you've been here too long. You cook soup, real soup. The last of the buffalo marrow, a strip of rabbit, a few pine nuts you forgot you had. You add snowmelt, stir, and taste. It's rich, deep, better than anything you've eaten since autumn. You feed Roy. He eats, but his hands tremble so badly you hold the cup for him. "I'm not going with you," he says. No drama, just fact. You nod. You don't argue. He wouldn't survive the trail. Maybe not another night. But he'll have warmth, food, company. That evening, you sit outside the shelter and watch the sun drop behind the peaks, leaving streaks of amber and plum across the snow. You dig your fingers into the thawing dirt again. You don't smile, but something in you relaxes, like a bowstring unstrung. The cold hasn't won, and neither have you, but the war is all changing, and soon it will be time to move. That night Roy asks you for a favour, not right away, not with drama. Just as you're stoking the fire for sleep, his voice rises from the dark, thinner than before. "When I go," he says, "don't let the animals take me." You turn slowly, not surprised. Not really. The request had been coming for days now, tiptoeing around every conversation. "I don't want to feed the foxes," he says. "Or worse." You nod once, not a promise, just a shared understanding. Roy shifts beneath the buffalo robe. "I've seen what happens. You leave a man out, the snow don't cover him right. The birds come first, then the rest." He coughs, long and hollow. "If I'm still here when you head out, just pile rocks over me. Heavy ones." You poke the fire, sending sparks up into the low roof. "All right," you say. He doesn't speak again for a long time. You lie back and listen to the fire crackle, to Roy's breathing slow and soften. You don't want to remember this part, but you know you will. Every mountain man does. You've learned to remember the freeze, the silence, the tricks of the wind, the weight of snow on your ribs. But this is the part no one warns you about, the weight of being the last one left. In the morning, you boil water again. You help Roy sip. He holds it for himself this time, just barely. His hands shake so much the cup rattles against his teeth. You begin packing. Not everything, not yet, but you organize your gear, tighten your snowshoes, wrap extra food in hide. The trail will be softening soon, but the rivers won't be passable for weeks. You'll have to go around, north first, then east, toward the post, or what's left of it. Roy watches you. "You'll make it," he says. "You don't know that." "I do." He's silent again. His breaths come thin, like thread unravelling. So you stay near the fire, not working, not moving, just being there. That afternoon the snow melts faster. The trees drip. A single bird call echoes through the trees, a sound you haven't heard in weeks. It's high and clear and strange. You step outside, follow the sound and spot it. A chickadee, small, puffed up, hopping along a low branch like it owns the forest. You watch it for a moment, amazed by its bravery, its foolishness. Or maybe it's wisdom. You're not sure anymore. When you return to the shelter, Roy is asleep again. You sit beside him and speak softly, not because he'll answer, but because the silence has grown too large to ignore. You talk about the beaver stew, the snow tunnel, the mountain goat you let go weeks ago. You even tell him about the print you found, the one that passed over your shelter in the storm. He doesn't stir, but something in his chest still moves. You eat alone. You clean the knife. You place another hot stone near his feet. And that night, as the snow softens outside and spring begins peeling the skin from winter, you say what you've been holding back. Thank you. You don't say for what. You just let the fire burn a little longer than it needs to. Because some men don't need funerals. They need warmth. You wake to find the fire burned out and Roy's blanket undisturbed. He's still. Too still. You sit up slowly, holding your breath, waiting for his chest to rise. It doesn't. You don't move for a long time. Just watch. Not because you need confirmation, but because stillness like this deserves a moment. Roy is gone, and in some strange way the shelter feels quieter now. Not emptier, just still. As if the mountain itself has taken a breath and let it out slowly, gently, without a sound. You move carefully, not out of fear or shock, but out of respect. You build the fire again, not for warmth, but for light. You heat water, not for tea, just because it feels right. Then you begin gathering stones. He asked you, and you're going to do it properly. It takes most of the morning to find the right ones. Flat, heavy, dry if you can manage. You pile them near the south ridge, where the ground has begun to thaw, where the sun touches first. Not hidden, but not too exposed. You build it slow, 3 flat layers high. A cairn, not a grave. There's no digging in ground like this. You wrap Roy in his blanket, tucking the buffalo robe around his shoulders, and carry him on your sled. He's lighter than you expected. But then again, most men are, once the weight leaves them. You place him beneath the stones. No words, no prayer, just a long silence, with your hand pressed to the top rock until your fingers sting. Back at the shelter, everything is still there. His cup, his boots, the empty corner he slept in. You don't clean it up right away. Not yet. Not because you can't. Because it still holds shape. Like a shadow on snow. Instead, you go check your traps. It feels absurd. Life goes on, they say, but here it doesn't go on so much as it insists, even when you're not ready, even when you're still half talking to a man who isn't there. You reset a broken snare, check the bait. The forest is waking up, birds calling, snow softening. Your boot sinks deeper with each step. The earth has begun to take itself back. That night, you can't sleep. Not because of grief, but because the forest is too loud now. The silence is gone, and in its place, cracking branches, shifting snow, dripping meltwater, tapping the shelter roof in a slow, steady rhythm. You lie in the dark, eyes open, listening. Then you hear it. A sound that makes your whole body go still. Footsteps. Not animal, not storm. Deliberate. You sit up slowly. Reach for your rifle. Hold your breath. A shadow passes near the tunnel entrance. No light, just movement. Slow, careful. Then silence again. You stay like that until morning, eyes open, breath shallow. When dawn comes, you step outside. The snow is pocked with old prints, but new ones now too. One set. Deep. Human. They came close. They didn't knock, they didn't stay. You track them for a few yards. They weave through the trees down toward the riverline, then vanish in meltwater. Back at camp, the fire is still warm, and suddenly it hits you. You're not alone anymore, and you might not be the only one sleeping with a rifle under your arm. You don't sleep the next night. Not really. You sit up against the shelter wall, rifle across your lap, ears sharpened like blades. The wind has gone still again, but the forest has not. Twigs crack, snow drips, trees shift, and always, you think you hear something else, a step, a breath, a cough just beyond the trees, but nothing comes. By dawn your eyes burn, your shoulders ache. You crawl out into the cold light and search the snow for prints. They're gone, melted or blown away, you're not sure. You find a pine branch broken low, fresh, and near it a patch of bark scraped clean. Signs of passage, human, recent, but again, no return trail. Back at camp you go through your supplies, nothing missing. But something's changed. Your traps, which you hadn't checked since Roy's cairn, have all been sprung. Everyone. Clean. Empty. Reset with precision. That stops you cold. You didn't do that. Whoever passed through knew traps, knew your traps, respected them enough not to steal, or maybe wanted you to know. They were there. You sit with that idea all morning. Someone watching, someone moving, someone who sees your shelter, your routine, your fire, and hasn't decided yet whether to come closer. That night you prepare differently. You eat early. You don't light the fire. You set your pan near the tunnel again, your tin cup beside it. Then you wait. This time you hear it before midnight. A slow step near the tree line. Then another. Then nothing. You hold your breath. The pan rattles. You leap up, rifle raised, heart pounding, and find it's fallen on its side. Wind? No. Still no wind. You crouch near the tunnel, wait, listening. A faint crunch, then retreat. In the morning something new. A piece of jerky, not yours, left beside your boot prints, wrapped in birch bark, tied with sinew. You unwrap it slowly, sniff. Smoked meat, not pine wood, spruce or alder. Someone left you food and walked away. You don't eat it, not because you fear poison, but because something about it feels ceremonial. You burn it in the fire with a handful of pine needles and sit quietly as the smoke curls upward. Later that day, as you pack your things, you add a new ritual to your morning. 3 stones stacked just outside your tunnel, freshly placed each day. A signal to whoever is watching. You're not afraid. You're aware. The mountains are full of eyes now that spring has come. And you're no longer the only soul walking out of winter. The next few days feel different, not easier, not safer, just observed. You go about your routine, gathering wood, boiling snow, checking traps, but there's a weight now, a sense that somewhere in the trees, just out of sight, someone is matching your pace, maybe a day behind, maybe an hour ahead, never close enough to see, always close enough to feel. You start talking out loud, nothing profound, just small things. Too damp today, you mutter, when smoke curls the wrong way. Trapline's light, you say, even when it's not. Part of you is speaking to yourself, part of you is speaking to them, whoever they are. You've stopped asking if you're imagining it. That question left when the jerky came, when the traps were reset, when the pan fell in perfect silence and no one came through the tunnel. One afternoon, you find more prints, these clearer, leading in a slow arc around your camp, not toward it, never toward it, but circling. You follow them briefly, but they vanish near the frozen creek where runoff has begun to chew through the ice. You crouch, fingers on the earth, and realize your own trail has become permanent now. Weeks of pacing, gathering, hunting. Your life has left grooves in the snow like ribs carved into the back of a mountain. They know you, even if you never see their face. You take precautions now, not out of fear but out of etiquette. You leave your gear tidier. You extinguish the fire more carefully. You even start stacking your woodpile with the grain turned outward, an old sign used by voyageurs to say friendly, passing through. The mountains have their own language, and you're learning it. One evening, as dusk turns the snow lavender, you hear something that makes your blood stir. A tin pan. Not yours. It clinks once, then silence. You don't move, just listen, every hair on your neck rising. A few minutes later there's a crack of wood, deliberate, not animal, and then nothing. No call, no signal, no visit, just presence. You sit by your fireless hearth, the coals glowing dull orange, and hold your rifle across your knees. But you don't feel the same tension as before. Instead, a strange comfort settles in. You're not alone, not anymore, and though you cannot name them, friend, shadow, rival, echo, they are there, part of this frozen ballet, bound by silence, moving only when the trees aren't watching. That night, you dream of movement, your feet sinking into soft earth, your rifle heavy on your shoulder, your face warm with spring air. In the dream, someone is walking beside you. You never look at them, but they match your pace. Exactly. You wake from that dream with your hand already on the rifle. The morning is pale, quiet, frost crusting the inside of your shelter walls. You lie there for a moment, listening, not for danger, but for rhythm. The crack of melting snow, the groan of trees stretching under new weight, the sound of someone else. But there's nothing today. Just the usual drip of thaw and the rustle of small birds returning too early for their own good. Still, the feeling doesn't fade. You walk the perimeter of your shelter, not out of fear, but habit now. Each step a ritual, each mark a line in the snow that says, still here, still watching. That's when you find it. Something small, almost nothing, wedged between two stones near the edge of your camp. A tooth, not animal, human, weathered smooth, but not ancient, yellowed, old. You pick it up gently and roll it between your fingers, flat on one side. Molar maybe. No blood, no note, just left. You crouch there for a long moment. Why would someone leave that? You place it on a stone, not pocketing it, not hiding it. If it was meant as a message, you're not the one to erase it. Instead, you set it upright, balancing carefully, a little monument. Not for death, for knowing. That evening, something else changes. The air shifts. You build a fire, not for food, not even for heat, but as a marker, a sign. You keep it small, controlled, fed with dry pine and birch. The smoke rises straight into the sky. An invitation, a question. You sit beside it, legs crossed, rifle resting behind you, not in your arms, and wait. You don't expect company. But the waiting is the point. Dusk stretches long this time of year. The mountains glow rose gold, the kind of light that makes shadows lean and breath hang slow. Then a sound, very faint, not footsteps, a cough, sharp, short, familiar. Your eyes snap toward the trees, but no one emerges. You don't move. You just whisper into the fire, almost without thinking. Still here. And somewhere, out beyond the branches past the melting creek, you feel an answer, not in words, but in presence. That night, you sleep without panic, not deeply, but with your rifle behind you instead of under you. That's something. Spring is peeling the ice off this world, and you know it's almost time to leave. The food's running thin. The snow's turning to mud in patches. The deer will return soon, and so will the men who follow them. And whoever's been out there, they may step forward or vanish forever. You don't know which, but you've made peace with both. Because the cold may have taken Roy, the mountain may have taken your time, but it never took your senses. And if someone was out there all this time, watching, circling, testing, you passed. You're still here, still warm, still walking. You don't mark the day you decide to leave. There's no grand ceremony, no dramatic packing. Just a slow, quiet acknowledgement one morning as the birdsong outnumbers the wind. The smell of thawing earth threads beneath the pine smoke. Your snowshoes sink instead of gliding, and for the first time in weeks you wake to dripping, not from ice, but from rain. You don't rush it. A man who leaves the mountains in haste doesn't leave at all. He gets lost a different way. So you begin slowly. You bury the bones from your winter traps under loose stones. You collapse the lean-to and cover it with branches, not to hide it, but to let it decay gracefully. A new man might pass this way next year and find your notch on the tunnel wall, might smile and wonder who came before. You don't take the pan, it's rusted now, edges curled. You set it by the tree, upside down as if still waiting to be kicked. One last joke between ghosts. Your pack is lighter than when you came, fewer bullets, less flour. The journal page is nearly gone, but you carry more weight than you arrived with, earned in silence, in frostbite, in long nights of listening and not running. The rifle rides on your shoulder, not clutched, not swinging, balanced. You take the same path Roy once vanished down, heading west toward lower ridges where the elk roam and the streams run faster. You know what the melt will bring. Mud, wet socks, slipping footholds, the occasional boot lost to a sucking bog. But you also know what else waits. Open water, rising sun, the scent of sap bursting from branches, and people, at least eventually. The thought doesn't fill you with joy or dread, just curiosity. How long will it take to remember how to speak, to wait in line, to smell coal smoke instead of pine? You pass the creek where the tracks once vanished. The trees here still lean in like old men with secrets. You leave a final stone, 3 stacked, 1 flat on top, your last signature to the mountains. If they want to answer, they will. That night you sleep in a dry patch beneath a rock ledge. No fire, just stars. And for the first time in months you dream of colour. Red wool, blue glass, yellowed pages, the face of a woman you haven't seen in years. You wake before dawn, heart slow and steady. Today you'll walk. You'll cross the high pass before the snow softens too much. And maybe, just maybe, on the other side of that ridge the wind will carry smoke. Not wood smoke, but chimney smoke. A town, a roof, a door you don't have to carve from ice. You reach the pass at midday, boots soaked, shoulders aching, but alive. The view from the summit stuns you. Below lies a wide valley, streaked with green and grey, its rivers already in thaw. Faint plumes rise in the distance, maybe smoke, maybe mist, but enough to set your jaw tight with the taste of possibility. It's strange how quiet the mountains become once you start your descent. The groans of ice and snow are replaced by trickling, meltwater, by birds you forgot the names of. Even the trees seem gentler, no longer sentinels judging your intrusion, but old neighbours watching you go with something like respect. You find a beaver dam halfway down the ridge, swollen with spring runoff. The water roars over the top. You pause to watch one of the animals trudge past with a branch in its teeth, utterly unimpressed by your presence. For a second you envy it. No need to explain where it's been, no one waiting to ask. Then, for the first time in weeks, you hear voices. Faint, distant, real. You crouch behind a boulder, instincts kicking in before your reason does. But the sound is unmistakable. Laughter, someone chopping wood, a mule braying, civilization. You sit there a long time, longer than needed, because returning isn't as simple as arriving. You think of your face, bearded, wind-burned, hollow-eyed, of your hands calloused and cracked, of the man you were before you left for the trapline, before the snow, before Roy. What do you say when you walk into town again? Do you say anything at all? In the end, your boots decide for you. You follow the sound, down into the valley, where cabins peek from behind spruce trees, their chimneys puffing with thin blue smoke. A hound barks somewhere close. A child's voice calls out, followed by the slam of a door. You adjust your rifle on your back and step between the trees. It feels like trespassing, but no one stops you. A man stacking firewood glances up. His eyes land on yours, linger, and then nod once. Not surprised, not alarmed, just knowing. Like you're one of many who've come out of that forest, quiet and changed. At the edge of the clearing you find a fence post. On it someone's hung a strip of cloth, red and faded, flapping in the wind. A marker, a welcome, or maybe just laundry. You reach out, let your fingers graze it, then keep walking. Someone will ask your name. Someone will offer coffee, maybe beans. Someone will want to know how you made it through the winter, but not yet. For now, you sit on the porch steps of a cabin with no one home. The wood is warm from sun. The wind smells like dirt and life again. You exhale slowly. You made it. And out there, somewhere in the mountains behind you, your lean-to, the tunnel, the tree with the pan, and the quiet steps of someone you never saw, those things stay, waiting for the next soul to come looking for silence, or to be found by it. You don't speak much for the first few days. The townsfolk understand. They've seen men like you before, fresh from the range, eyes still scanning the horizon for threats that aren't there. Your words come slow, quiet, like breaking through ice just thick enough to resist. You take a room above the trading post. It smells like tobacco and dry rot, but there's a bed with a mattress and a stove that clicks and ticks as it cools. The first night you light a candle and sit for hours just watching the flame, your boots still on, pack still slung across the chair. The shopkeeper, a wiry woman named Mrs. Hatch, doesn't pry. She sets down a bowl of stew and mutters, "Eat while it's hot," and that's all. You nod. You eat. Salt and fat and heat. You want to cry and laugh at once, but your face won't move like that yet. Outside, the town grinds on. Wagons creak, dogs bark, children holler. It feels like a play you once saw but forgot the lines to. You observe more than participate. On day 3, someone recognizes the rifle. "That Roy's old iron?" the man asks, leaning against a fence post, straw in his teeth. You hesitate. "It was," you reply, "just that." The man nods, doesn't press. He's got the weathered face of someone who's lost men in snow too. Later you find Roy's name scratched into the side of the trading post wall, half covered in a wash of red paint. He must have passed through here years ago. You trace the carving with your thumb. The next day you start writing again, not in the same journal, that one's buried in the trapline, but on loose paper from the post. New words, written slow. You list names, the mountains you crossed, the creeks you boiled, the dreams you had. You draw the lean-to, the tunnel, even the old tin pan upturned at the tree base. Little sketches. Your hands still shake. You write down the tooth. Just a line. Someone left it for me. You don't try to explain. Some things are just meant to be recorded. You write the date, or what you think the date is. You title the page, "End of Winter." But even as you write it, you know it's not the ending. Not really. Because now that you're back, folks want you to stay. Help with fencing, trade hides, maybe even guide someone green into the hills come fall. You nod politely, but your boots are still under the bed, clean and dry but laced loosely, ready. Because once you've wintered that far into the wild, something in you stays cold. Not in a bitter way, in a watchful way. Like the mountain itself left its breath inside your ribs. And when the first snow flurries hit the ridgeline again, dusting the town roofs in white, your shoulders itch. Not in fear, but in memory. You walk the edge of town most mornings, boots crunching the frost-thin grass, coat collar turned high. The mountains loom beyond the tree line, distant, silent, unchanged. They don't beckon, not exactly, but they wait. There's a new boy at the post, eager, skinny, full of questions. He eyes your gear with admiration and a touch of awe. One morning he blurts, "You really spend winters up there?" You nod. He leans closer. "Is it true the wolves circle your camp when you sleep?" You think for a moment, then smile just slightly. "Sometimes." He stares, wide-eyed, then sprints off like you just handed him a campfire ghost story to last a week. The town spins on without needing you at its centre, and that's how you like it. You fix boots, trade pelts, mend a fence or two. But your eyes wander. You notice the small things others miss. The tilt of a hawk circling above the barn, the tracks by the river not made by livestock. You mark the days by shadows and smell. Even in town you measure wind like it matters. One night at the tavern, a trapper 3 ales deep starts telling a tale about a storm up near Granite Ridge, swears he barely made it down alive, says he left a whole line of traps behind, figures they're long buried. You sip your drink, say nothing, because you know Granite Ridge, you know the tunnels of snow, you know that maybe, if someone knew where to look, those traps could be found come spring. But you're not ready to go back, not just yet. Instead, you begin carving. A scrap of wood, a stubby blade. You shape the lean-to first, then the tree with the pan, then the tooth, curled like a hook, rough at the base. You don't know why exactly. Maybe because forgetting feels worse than remembering. You place the carvings on the windowsill. The wind rattles them at night. Someone asks if you'll teach them how to survive a winter up there. You laugh, not unkindly. There's no lesson, you say. Just decisions, a lot of small ones made when no one's looking. Spring nears. The snow melts faster each day. The air smells green again. You sharpen your knife, not for protection, for carving, for maybe one day returning. Not because you have to, but because it's part of you now. Like the scar on your thumb, like the howl you sometimes hear in your dreams, like that quiet piece of sky above the tunnel, the one that never spoke but always listened. You stand by the fire and stare into it, not for heat, but for memory. And behind your eyes, the mountains still breathe. The final days of spring come soft and sudden. One morning, you wake to the clatter of hooves and the call of birds that don't belong to winter. The snow line has pulled back like a tide, revealing grass bent low but alive. In the distance, water rushes down from the ridges carrying silt and thawed stories. You step outside and blink against the brightness. No more frost on the windows, no more breath hanging in the air like smoke. It feels strange, almost too easy. You find yourself pacing the town limits, boots landing in soft earth instead of crunching snow. People smile more now. Children chase chickens. Someone's playing a fiddle in the saloon, badly, but with heart. Mrs. Atch hangs laundry on the line and waves when you pass. They don't ask where you're headed next, but you can tell they're wondering. Because you've started sorting your gear again. Your blanket roll is tighter this time. Your tools cleaner. Everything smells faintly of oil and leather. You even patch the coat, stitching a square over the tear made by that branch on the 5th night, the one you thought was a bear until you realised it never moved. You keep your journal in your coat pocket now. The new one. Pages neat, bound with twine. The last entry says only, "Not done yet." One afternoon, you walk up to the ridge behind town. It's not high, but it gives you a clear view. The peaks beyond are still crowned with snow, jagged and white and waiting. You sit with your back against a rock and pull out a dried strip of venison. Chew slowly, no fire, just the sun. And for the first time, you let yourself remember it all, not in pieces but whole. Roy's laugh, sharp in the cold, The frozen tunnel and how you almost didn't crawl out. The old tin pan, the howling you never saw, and the silence. Always the silence. It doesn't haunt you now. It hums. You reach into your pocket and pull out the small carved tooth, worn smooth from being turned in your palm night after night. You set it on the stone beside you. Let it catch the light. A hawk rides the wind overhead, not circling, just passing through. You don't follow it with your eyes. You've learned better. Instead, you close them. Because sometimes, when the wind is just right and your heart is quiet, you can still hear the mountain breathe. You make one last stop at the trading post. Mrs. Hatch doesn't look surprised to see your pack slung high again, boots polished with fresh grease. She hands you a parcel wrapped in oilcloth, dried apples, a pinch of coffee, and something heavy in the bottom. You raise an eyebrow. "Flint," she mutters. You wore yours down to a whisper. You nod, and for once you manage a full sentence. "Thank you." She shrugs, but her eyes soften. Outside, the town exhales behind you. The thrum of life fades with every step past the corral, past the gate, past the last tree marked by the weathered hide of someone's long-gone deer. You don't head straight into the peaks. Instead, you walk the edge of them for a time, between memory and invitation. You stop to drink from a stream that no longer tastes of snowmelt but of moss and minerals. You see bear tracks again, fresh this time, and follow them, just for a little while. And one night, far enough to see the stars sharpen and close enough to still smell chimney smoke on the wind, you build a fire. Not because you're cold, but because you want to. You set your gear with practiced ease, stones, tinder, a single match. The flames rise gently as if remembering you. You sit beside them, legs stretched out, and take out the carved figures. Each one carries a piece of you now, the lean-to, the tin pan, the tooth. You arrange them in a circle, then add one more you finished just this morning. A mountain man, shoulders hunched, hat low, hands gripping a rifle. You place him in the middle. It's not a monument, not a grave marker. It's a memory, anchored, a reminder that you endured, not as a ghost or legend, but as flesh and grit and choice. You lie back and stare up into the night. There's no fear in your breath anymore, no ache in your ribs. You don't feel like someone hiding from the cold. You feel like someone returned to it, because the mountain never took you. It made you, and it's still making you. Every time you remember how to listen to silence, how to fear wisely, how to sleep with one eye half open and one hand wrapped around hope. You close your eyes. You dream not of hunger or frost, but of rivers thawed and boots that never split. And somewhere beyond thought, the wind carries your name, not with urgency, but with recognition. Like an old friend nodding from a distance, you smile in your sleep, and this time you don't wake cold. And so the fire crackles low, the stars wheel gently overhead, and you lie there, half dream, half memory, wrapped in a coat that smells of wood smoke and pine. You did it. You made it through a winter few would dare to whisper about, let alone walk through. Not as a legend or a name on a map, but as one small, stubborn figure pressed into the snow line. You didn't conquer the mountain. You respected it, endured it, learned from it in a language that has no words, only wind and instinct and stillness. Your fingers are calloused now but steady. Your breath is quieter but deeper. There's a rhythm to you now that matches the land. Let that rhythm carry you. Let it soften your shoulders, slow your thoughts. You're warm, not because the fire is strong, but because the storm has passed. Let your mind rest now, knowing you're no longer wandering. The trails are behind you, folded into memory. The cold has lifted. The trees are silent with peace, not threat. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls once. The sky holds you like a quilt. Breathe in, breathe out. You're safe now, and sleep, real sleep, can finally come.